Have you ever thought how you have way too much sanity that you just don't know what to do with? Have you ever thought, man, I wish I could exchange my healthy heartbeat, mental well-being, and lack of anger issues for some nice vibes? Well, if you answered yes, first of all, that was way too specific, so I know you're a liar, and second of all, Sekiro is a game made just for you. You. If you've seen my vibe check video about Mirror's Edge, I mentioned how sunny summer days always remind me of that game. What made me want to make a video about it is that thoughts of it sort of bled into my real life. When a game's spirit is still with me long after I've actually finished it, I know that it was a special experience that I'll remember for a while. And because you already know what you clicked on, you can imagine that I feel similarly about Sekiro, despite all the lasting damage it cost me. Ever since I beat this game back when it came out in 2019, I've had occasional thoughts about it pop into my head randomly while I'm doing something unrelated. I get vivid memories of the corrupted monk, the divine dragon, my first encounter with Headless, and Emma crushing my head between her thighs. Okay, I might have imagined that last one. It's like I have a collection of mind screenshots that I made of the environments and levels. And this is not because of a particularly difficult fight or an important story mission, it's because of the vibes, man. Vibe check is basically a title I use to give me an excuse to obsess over pretty visuals in games. However, I will admit that visuals aren't the only thing that makes up an atmosphere, so I'll touch on all these things that work together to form the feeling this game gives me, but that feeling is still my main focus, so don't take this as an objective review of the game, but rather a totally, completely subjective vibe check. Before we get into it, I know it's annoying when YouTubers ask for likes before you've even watched the video, but the algorithm really did my last video dirty, and a lot of my subscribers aren't even seeing my stuff pop up in their feeds, so I would love you forever if you smack that like button right now. Thank you. Okay, so I feel like I should start by saying I don't really know what the story of Sekiro even is. Like all From Software games, the story is pretty vague and convoluted, although I believe it is less so than the Souls games. But in this case, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. You know how when you're a kid and you're talking to an adult and they say a word you don't know but it sounds smart, so you try to pretend like you know it and hope that it's not too important to the conversation so that it doesn't become obvious that you don't know it? That's what the story of Sekiro is like. Yes, it is exactly like that. I understand next to nothing about it, but I have a feeling that it's really good, and I'm just a dumbass, and so I never dare to challenge it or even think about it too much for that matter. Plus, I know there's countless lore videos and explanations for every little thing, so that must mean there's something there. And oh my god, spoiler alert, the sculptor is actually the demon of hatred. This one tidbit of story was enough to carry the whole thing for me. I don't know how he became the demon, I don't know why, but I know it was an epic gamer moment. And I kinda sorta maybe had to cheese that boss. So how does the story of Sekiro, or rather the way in which it is told, influence the atmosphere? Well, I think it adds a big air of mysticism around the whole thing. There's a difference between a story that's vague because it barely even exists, and one that feels vague on purpose. I don't know why this slimy looking ugly thing that sucks your soul out by playing its pathetic little flute exists, but I know it feels like it belongs there. This convincing world building has as much to do with the storytelling as with the visual design. If you're wondering why I'm not comparing Sekiro to Dark Souls, it's because I believe it's a game that can stand on its own two independent feet, but also because I haven't played the Souls games. I've always known that they were fantastic games, but whenever I tried getting into the third one, I always gave up after a short while. But I never even considered dropping Sekiro at any moment. This could be because it's an easier game for my normie brain to grasp, as it strips away a lot of elements like armor, weapons, classes, and stats, but it's more likely because I'm the definition of weeb trash who is instantly sold on games set in feudal Japan. This world was so engrossing to me from the moment I stepped into it that I was willing to push through the immense anxiety it was giving me and go back to try that raging bull idiot for the billionth time, heart pounding and controller in a constant state of moisture. Just because I wanted to see more of it. I didn't want to abandon this place that I felt so immersed in. The Japanese aesthetic has so much cool shit to offer, and even though it was always popular, I feel like it was underutilized in AAA games until recently. Only in the past few years have we had mainstream big budget titles set in Japan like Nioh and Ghost of Tsushima, but Ubisoft's been dead set on avoiding the most requested location for an Assassin's Creed game for more than 10 years now.
It is me, CEO of Ubisoft. I hear you want Assassin's Creed in Japan. I am delighted to announce, our next AC is set in the distant future. Shit's got lasers, bruh.
This setting was done perfectly in Sekiro. The game knows that you'll likely be stuck in one place for a while, so it makes sure that every new area you go to feels fresh and unique. And in case you haven't noticed, Sekiro's graphics aren't really anything special, and they don't need to be. Why do I still remember the atmosphere of a game that I played as a kid, but I can't even bother paying attention to a lot of new, better looking games? Why does realism seem to be the ultimate goal? Hell, I've seen pixel art JPEGs that made me feel more emotion than Watch Dogs Legion. But then again, this image gives me more emotion than Watch Dogs Legion. Sekiro knows what it is and is not afraid to show it. It was never aiming for the highest res textures or ray traced reflections, but my dear god, are the visuals as impactful as they get. Every single location I've ever visited in Sekiro is ingrained into my memories. And how could it not be when I'm forced to go back to it over and over and over and over? I mean, the grotesque enemy designs that FromSoft is so good at are by themselves memorable enough, but then you also get so many picturesque views bursting with color, and you're put in the best possible places to enjoy the scenery. The environments are crafted with your perspective in mind. Well, sometimes. Other times it's the exact opposite and the camera is your hardest boss.
Greetings, Sekiro Guru here.
Fighting the armored warrior in this long wooden bridge while the sunset rays are shining through is only made more beautiful and memorable when you kick him off the bridge through the wall, which leaves you with a breathtaking view on top of the satisfaction and relief of finishing a fight. With the exception of some caves and underground areas, which I'm generally not a fan of in games, nearly every other area of Sekiro is like this. It excels at giving you that feeling of awe you get when you're in nature and you realize how small you are compared to a big mountain or deep lake. This is a feeling that surprisingly few games manage to capture. I can't say exactly why, but when it's done right, you can definitely tell. You can't hide from this big ass snake while trying to sneak past it without at least a small tingle in your testicles. It not only looks but feels much bigger than you, even though this is a third-person game. I think I'm noticing a worrying pattern, which is that I like to feel small and insignificant. This perspective of you, the player, relative to your environment is something I also talked about in my Mirror's Edge video, and a big part of why I enjoy that game so much. I honestly think talking about how pretty the game is could never do it justice. If I tell you I had the most serene experience chasing a few monkeys around for literal hours, it sounds stupid, and I know that, but I did. You have this big mysterious area that is actually an illusion you're trapped in, and the only way to get out is to kill all the monkeys. This is a puzzle segment, so you take a break from all the fighting and put your 3 brain cells on overdrive. I purposely didn't want to look up a guide for this because it felt good to run around and try all these different approaches on my own. Of course, none of them worked, so I did end up looking up a guide, but I had quite a memorable experience in the meantime. I can't explain nor show in a few minutes of footage how spending hours in this area felt. So if you haven't played this game yet, I recommend you just give it a shot. There is a sort of barrier to entry with how difficult it is, so it's definitely not for everyone, but if you don't mind a little challenge, it'll only make experiencing this beautiful world more rewarding. Speaking of that, the process of experiencing the world is in itself enjoyable. What I mean by this is, you have a goddamn grappling hook. The mall ninja within me was delighted at the first glimpse of the grappling hook from the trailers, and the possibilities it opens up are even better than I expected. You feel like you're given a lot of freedom with your movement. The world, like in the Souls games, is a set of connected semi-open environments with the occasional alternate path or secret area. This means you can't just pick a direction and spam jump to fucking bunny hop over mountains, but even the linear way in which you traverse feels fast, fluid, and responsive. I know stamina is like the key mechanic for Souls games, but to be honest, all stamina ever did for me in any other game is piss me off. I'm playing a game to feel powerful, and here you are putting limits to my power.
How dare you?
Does the Dovahkiin, a man who possesses the blood and soul of a dragon, really get completely exhausted and unable to move after 20 seconds of a light jog? I'm so glad Sekiro doesn't have a stamina bar. You can run, jump, and use the grappling hook as much as you like, which makes for ultra satisfying movement. And look at how good the movement animations are. You look and feel like a goddamn mermaid soaring through water. But then look at how you turn when you're moving. No animation. This game is all about split-second movement and responsiveness. Without this snappiness, the whole thing falls apart, so it makes sense that this is prioritized over realism, right? The recent Cyberpunk release has made me think about priorities a lot. How games are trying to push the boundaries of graphics, realism, and size, which often leaves the gameplay to suffer. Why are games afraid of being games? I respect and appreciate that Sekiro doesn't shy away from sacrificing anything it needs in order to keep the gameplay a top priority. Because at the end of the day, no matter how good a game looks or how much your character fumbles around when you spin the analog stick, what makes a game great is the gameplay. Now, I'm not saying the realistic approach is wrong, it just doesn't need to be the standard. Miyazaki has even talked explicitly about FromSoft's decision to prioritize responsiveness over realism, which I think is what makes their games feel a cut above the others. If you go the opposite direction, there's basically infinite things to add and infinite ways in which you can stretch yourself out too thin, because we're still so far off from ultimate realism. We've seen over and over again in examples like Minecraft, Fortnite, and a ton of successful indie games, how much further the core of the game gets you as opposed to the surface layer. It's my pet peeve in gaming how often this is ignored and big money is instead pushed into marketing and making the game look appealing only to end up forgotten in a few years.
Nope.
The tight movement of Sekiro ties in nicely to the combat because it basically is the combat. What can I even say about the biggest selling point of this game? I guess the biggest compliment for a game is that it ruins other games, so yes, Sekiro will ruin sword fighting games for you. You will never be able to enjoy anything ever again. Why haven't we been doing it this way since forever? Fuck the stamina bar. The posture system is so simple yet adds so much depth to combat. It's essentially a second health bar that you fill up mostly by parrying but also attacking. When either the posture is full or health empty, you can take an enemy's life. Some attacks do more damage to posture, others to vitality. Some enemies regenerate posture quicker than others, which you can slow down by damaging their vitality. Some attacks are easier to dodge, others to parry. That's a lot of variables that all change the way you're approaching an enemy. Pair that with the unique movesets you have to remember for each boss and timing you have to nail, and you have infinite possibilities for enemies that feel wildly different from one another. I swear, having my eardrums ruptured by the blaring death blow sound effect was never not satisfying to me, no matter how many hours I put into the game. And this is all achieved without any legendary tier scorpion thunder slasher katana you found in a deer's butthole. There's basically only one weapon you use throughout the whole game and you don't even upgrade it. I say basically because you do have your prosthetic arm attachments, which are super cool, but they're not really essential. They don't replace your main weapon at any point, they just give you an edge in specific situations. That being said, they're far from useless. Going with the overall theme of this game, there's not too many things it does, but everything it does do is fleshed out and meaningful, except for the praying strikes. I will forever hold a grudge against Miyazaki personally for not making the coolest looking skill actually useful. Now, I'm not against unique collectible weapons or level upgrades, but Sekiro doesn't need any of that. If this was a game where I used the same eBay sword all throughout, but battles felt easy and repetitive, I would have preferred it had more unlockable weapons. But just imagine how much a half-assed loot or crafting system would have hurt this game's charm. What Sekiro does so well is force you to upgrade yourself. Honestly, the more you play this game, the better you get at it, and there's really nothing else to attribute it to other than yourself. That's right, King, you did that, and don't let the haters tell you otherwise. Yes, you do upgrade your health and attack power, but bosses also get stronger, so you still die within just a couple of hits. The game is so subtle, yet so brutal in guiding you through this self-improvement journey. It doesn't outright tell you how good your parry was, you just get a sense of it naturally after a few attempts. When the sword clashing sound is the most satisfying and produces the largest spark, you know you did it perfectly. This creeps into your subconsciousness and becomes just a feeling. You don't have numbers flying up telling you how much damage you're doing with which attack, you just learn to feel it. The game also forces you to learn different styles of combat in the most FromSoft way possible, by simply pummeling it in through your dense skull. You might have been used to dodging a lot, for example, but then you come across a mini-boss that you simply won't get through without parrying, no matter how swollen your forehead veins get. There were a few times during my first playthrough where I had these aha moments brute forced into my ape brain, and it was always an epic gamer moment. No matter what though, you are going to end up dying way more than twice. And through constantly revisiting the same areas this way, and the game bringing you back to places as the story progresses, you really get to feel like you've spent time in this world. You remember all the nooks and crannies you end up exploring, the constructions, interiors, colors of nature, temperature, and time of day. Plus, throughout this exploration, you always have a safe space to come back to periodically. A dilapidated temple hidden away in a nook surrounded by mountains with only one way out. No surprises, just comfort. Sure, your image of a safe space might not be a rundown temple where an equally rundown old man spends the entirety of his life carving hundreds of creepy Buddha statues, but it's still the most familiar place you have. After a long and arduous journey, you come back here to get an added fill of your healing gourd, get an arm upgrade, or shove your face into Emma's mommy milkers, and then be on your way again. It's a brief moment of comfort before you go back to suffering. Alright, I know someone will probably scream at me about this, but I care about music a lot, so I can't not mention it. I think a better soundtrack could have added a lot to the already phenomenal atmosphere. Sekiro has a decent and definitely unique sounding soundtrack, but it's really not that memorable or impactful in my opinion. It's just there. Music is a very powerful tool and can often make or break a project, but in Sekiro's case, it essentially does neither of those. One word I could use to describe it is adequate. There are exceptions where I think the potential shines through, like this bit for example, where the creepiness is only enhanced by the minimalistic sound. But in most cases, I think it could have been better.
It was at this moment he knew.
If you haven't figured it out by now, I think Sekiro is a very special game, more so than it got credit for in my opinion. This surreal, scary, and beautiful world feels unlike anything else I've ever played, which is why it instantly became one of my favorite games of all time. It's an experience that sticks with you for a while, and it was definitely worth every minute of my life that it shortened. So of course I had to talk about it. I know I have huge gaps between uploads, and this one was probably my biggest yet. It always feels horrible to go so long without uploading, but believe me that YouTube is all I think about every day, and I plan to keep uploading for the foreseeable future, as long as it takes to make this channel into something that I'm proud of. And at that point, I'll just stop. On that topic, I'm definitely not proud of the performance of my last video. It did worse than videos I uploaded 6 months ago with half the subscribers. Had horrendous click-through rate, which means y'all just chose to not click on it. Was this thumbnail not enough to convince you? It's not an essay like this one. I just played some old Disney games and had fun. I think it was a fun video. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I despise every video I make equally by the time I upload it, so I need some outside perspective. Go over there, click on the end screen thing, watch it, and boost my stats by at least 1% so I don't go to sleep crying again. Anyways, if you want to keep up with me during the drop period between uploads, I am active on Twitter, so go follow me there. Big kisses to my beautiful members, Aeons Alex, Yops, Heartless Creations, and Defro Damn Right. I will post occasional members only videos where I just chill and play random games, one of which is up already, so click that join button if you want to see that.